Good morning, gardeners, and welcome to Friday, July 14th. My name is Catherine, and I created a show called Good Morning Gardeners, even though I can't grow green things because I am referring to gardening metaphorically. We're planting the seeds for a better day. We're starting our morning by getting in the right mindset to cultivate a better life for ourselves, for our communities, and a better world. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you'd like to add Good Morning Gardeners to your morning routine. I do my best to wake you up with positive and mentally stimulating ideas, but sometimes I miss things. If you have something to add to the ideas I discussed today, please chime in the comments section below. Today's daily Stoic reading, titled A Little Knowledge is Dangerous, begins with a quote from Epictetus. Every great power is dangerous for the beginner. You must therefore wield them as you are able, but also in harmony with nature. You must therefore wield them as you are able, but in harmony with nature. The authors add, great teachers are usually hardest on their most promising students. When teachers see potential, they want it to be fully realized, but great teachers are also aware that natural ability and quick comprehension can be quite dangerous to the student if left alone. Early promise can lead to overconfidence and create bad habits. Those who pick things up quickly are notorious for skipping the basic lessons and ignoring the fundamentals. Don't get carried away. Take it slow. Train with humility. I like that one because I think it can be applied on the individual level as well as the larger group level as well. From my perspective, I've always been a fast learner. I excelled effortlessly in school, which I think made me overconfident as a young adult and caused me to overlook some of the basic skills that are necessary for success as an adult. These skills were, of course, social skills, for which I believed that my grade point average exempted me. Or from which I believed my grade point average exempted me. When looking at humanity at large, I think most of us would agree that many great powers have been used in the name of progress, and then they resulted in devastating consequences. The chief example that comes to my mind is the use of fossil fuels and the effect on our environment, but please leave any ideas that come to your mind in the comments section. For some reason, we tend to leap ahead with new technologies, new powers, before thinking them through and all the potential ramifications. I think one of the primary reasons for this is that it's not profitable to slow down and give something more thought, to do more studies on a product before putting it on the market. Often it makes more financial sense to deal with the lawsuit that will come years down the road after people's health has been affected and after you've raked in millions of profit. This line of thought reminded me of something that I read about cars not too long ago. And where did I read this thing? In Team Human by Douglas Rushkoff. Now, trust me, I know that I have been referencing this book quite a bit lately, but I can't help it because this book touches on virtually everything that I think about in a typical day. Now, I do promise to read some more books soon. I'm working on a few right now, and hopefully I will have a new book to fixate on in a couple of weeks or so. By the way, if you'd like to see what I'm reading now and what I plan to read next, I log most of this on Goodreads, and I will link my profile in the description of this video. But for our learning moment, let's once again go into Team Human by Douglas Rushkoff. In the section I'm going to read, Douglas is in the midst of critiquing technology, or more accurately, the way that technology has been and is being used. If you've been listening since I first introduced this book, you may recall that I said earlier on that Douglas presented a harsh criticism, or maybe it was a harsh critique of technology. But now that I have finished the book and I've had plenty of time to mull it over, I think it's much more accurate to say that Douglas is cautioning us about technology and not simply criticizing it. So bear that in mind as you listen this morning. In the end, Douglas Rushkoff doesn't advocate for abolishing all technology, but he advocates for staying mindful of how it's affecting our lives today and being cautious with how we use it going forward. Technologies seem free of embedded agendas. Their automation and opacity make highly reversed situations appear quite normal and natural. For example, most Americans accept the premise that they need a car to get to work, and a better car leads to a more pleasant commute. But that's only because we forgot that our pedestrian and streetcar commutes were forcibly dismantled by the automobile industry. The geography of the suburban landscape was determined less by concern for our quality of life than to promote the sales of automobiles that workers would be required to use. The automobile made home and work less accessible to each other, not more, even though the car looks like it's enhancing the commute. Once the figure and ground have been reversed, technology only disguises the problem. Under the pretense of solving problems and making people's lives easier, most of our technological innovations just get people out of sight or out of the way. This is the true legacy of the industrial age. Consider Thomas Jefferson's famous invention, the dumbwaiter. We think of it as a convenience. Instead of carrying food and wine from the kitchen up to the dining room, the servants could place items into the small lift and convey it upstairs by pulling on ropes. Food and drink appeared as if by magic. But the purpose of the dumbwaiter had nothing to do with saving effort. Its true purpose was to hide the grotesque crime of slavery. This may be less technology's fault than the way we've chosen to use it. The industrial age brought us many mechanical innovations, but in very few cases did they actually make production more efficient. They simply made human skill less important, so that laborers could be paid less. Assembly line workers had to be taught only a single simple task, such as nailing one tack into the sole of a shoe. Training took minutes instead of years, and if workers complained about their wages or conditions, they could be replaced the next day. The industrialist's dream was to replace them entirely with machines. The consumers of early factory goods loved the idea that no human hands were involved in their creation. They marveled at the seamless machine edges and perfectly spaced stitches of industrial age products. There was no trace of humans at all. Even today, Chinese laborers finish smartphones by wiping off any fingerprints with a highly toxic solvent, proven to shorten the workers' lives. This is how valuable it is for consumers to believe their devices have been assembled by magic, rather than by the fingers of underpaid and poisoned children. Creating the illusion of no human involvement actually costs human lives. Of course, the mass production of goods requires mass marketing, which has proven just as dehumanizing. While people once bought products from the people who made them, mass production separates the consumer from the producer, and this replaces this human relationship with the brand. So, where people used to purchase oats from the miller down the block, now consumers go to the store and buy a box shipped from 1,000 miles away. The brand image, in this case a smiling Quaker, substitutes for the real human relationship and is carefully designed to appeal to us more than a living person could. To pull that off, producers turned again to new technology. Mass production led to mass marketing, but mass marketing required mass media to reach out to the actual masses. We may like to think that radio and TV were invented so that entertainers could reach bigger audiences, but the proliferation of broadcast media was subsidized by America's new national brands, which gained access to consumers coast to coast. Marketers of the period believed that they were performing a patriotic duty, fostering allegiance to mass market brands that iconized American values and ingenuity. But the collateral damage was immense. Consumer culture was born, and media technologies became the main way to persuade people to desire possessions over relationships and social status over social connections. The less fruitful the relationships in a person's life, the better target that person was for synthetic ones. The social fabric was undone. Since at least the industrial age, technology has been used as a way to make humans less valued and essential to labor, business, and culture. This is the legacy that digital technology inherited. In a digital media environment, it's particularly easy for figure and ground, or people and their inventions, to flip roles. Because so much of this landscape is programmed to do one thing or another, human beings often become the more passive, automatic players, compared with the code that actively defines the terrain and influences our behaviors. If we don't truly know what something is programmed to do, chances are it is programming us. Once that happens, we may as well be machines ourselves. So I find the idea that we have been programmed by our technologies so compelling. One example that comes to my mind is, as he mentioned, advertising, especially on social media, because I know that I have been made to want things simply because they were advertised to me. I mean, how many times have you bought something that you saw an ad for, but if you'd never seen that ad, you never would have wanted the thing in the first place? Another example is fitness watches. I used to wear an Apple Watch religiously, and for a time, I even competed with my Apple Watch friends to see who could complete their daily move goals first, or who could keep up the longest streak. But then at some point, I realized I needed rest days. If I recall correctly, the Apple Watch app, at least at that time, did not let me customize my own goals, and it forced the goal of 30 minutes of exercise on me every single day. And at that time, my workouts consisted of an hour of weightlifting 3 times per week, half an hour of running 2 times per week, and an hour of yoga twice per week. I crammed all of that into the 5 weekdays, and I think it was pretty reasonable to expect that I would need to rest on the weekends. But if I did that, I'd lose my streak. Eventually, after I got more and more interested in meditation and mindfulness, I realized that I felt more oppressed by the Apple Watch than empowered. The need to keep it charged, keep it in constant contact with my skin at all times, and the way I had to constantly manage the notifications so I wasn't overwhelmed with texts and reminders to breathe made it feel like a shackle. Someone close to me, and if you're watching this, you know who you are, doesn't feel like his exercise really counts if the Apple Watch isn't picking it up. So because this line of thought is veering toward biohacking and that kind of thing, I'm going to read another section to you from Team Human that discusses the dangers of the transhumanist mindset. Self-improvement of the transhumanist sort requires that we adopt an entirely functional understanding of who and what we are. All of our abilities can be improved upon, and all of our parts are replaceable, upgradable. The quirks that make us humans are interpreted instead as faults that impede our productivity and progress. Embracing those flaws, as humanists tend to, is judged by the transhumanists as a form of nostalgia and a dangerously romantic misinterpretation of our savage past as a purer state of being. Nature and biology are not mysteries to embrace, but limits to transcend. This transhumanist mindset is, in fact, taking hold. We can see it in the way we bring digital technologies closer and closer. The screen is encroaching on the eye, from TVs to computer monitors to phone screens to smartwatches to VR goggles to tiny LEDs that project images into the retina to neural implants that communicate directly with the optic nerve. With each leap in human-machine intimacy, resolution increases and our utility value is improved along with some measurable metric. This is the mindset encouraged by wristbands that count our heartbeats and footsteps under the pretense of improved health or life extension. Health, happiness, and humanity itself are all reducible to data points and subject to optimization. We are all just numbers, the quantified self. Like a music recording that can be reduced to code and stored in a file, the quantified human can also be reduced to bits, replicated infinitely, uploaded to the cloud, or installed in a robot. But only the metrics we choose to follow are recorded and translated. Those we don't value, or don't even know about, are discarded in the new model. Improved longevity, supercognition, or military prowess all sound promising until we consider what is being left behind, whose values are being expressed and whose aren't, and how these choices change the larger systems of which we are a part. Just as life-saving antibiotics also strengthen bacteria and weaken the collective immune system, or as steroids improve short-term performance at the expense of long-term health, there are trade-offs. We, or the companies selling the improvements, are actively picking which features of humanity to enhance and which to suppress or ignore. In amplifying an individual's brain power, we may inadvertently disable some of their ability to connect with others or achieve organismic resonance. What of racial diversity, gender fluidity, sexual orientation, or body type? The human traits that are not favored by the market will surely be abandoned. Could that happen to a civilization as supposedly enlightened as our own? Our track record suggests that it will. The internet's tremendous social and intellectual potential was surrendered to short-term market priorities, turning a human-centered medium into a platform for manipulation, surveillance, and extraction. The more we see the human being as a technology to be enhanced, the greater the danger of applying this same market ethos to people and extending our utility value at the expense of others. Life extension becomes the last-ditch attempt of the market to increase our available timeline as consumers, and consumers willing to spend anything for that extra few years of longevity. Sure, many of us would accept a digital implant if it really worked as advertised. Who wouldn't want some painless enhancements free of side effects, or the choice of when or whether to die? Besides, participation in the ever-changing economy requires some acquiescence to technology, from streetcars and eyeglasses to elevators and computers. But our technological investments come with strings. The deals are not honest. They've never been. Companies change their user agreements, or they sell the printers at a loss and then overcharge for the ink cartridges. The technologies we are currently bringing into our lives turn us into always-on customers, more like subscribers than purchasers, never really owning or fully controlling what we've bought. Operating system upgrades render our hardware obsolete, forcing us to buy new equipment. How long until that chip in my brain and the neurons that grew around it are obsolete? It's not that wanting to improve ourselves, even with seemingly invasive technology, is so wrong. It's that we humans should be making active choices about what it is we want to do to ourselves, rather than letting the machines or the markets propelling them decide for us. So, for our feel-good moment today, I simply want to remind you that you are good just the way you are. You are a perfect human, even if you come with a ton of quirks and flaws, because humans are supposed to come with quirks and flaws. That doesn't mean you shouldn't try to improve yourself. Personally, I'm obsessed with self-improvement, but it does mean that you shouldn't lose sight of what's really important. Self-improvement should be done to improve your life, to make you happier. But if your self-improvement efforts are making you miserable, it's not worth it. I have been deep down the rabbit hole of restrictive dieting and excessive exercising, and I'm still in the process of figuring out how much of this self-improvement was done because I wanted to do it, and how much was done because society had programmed me to believe that I needed the perfect body. For our focus moment today, I invite you to examine the way that you interface with technologies. Remember what Douglas Rushkoff wrote: if you don't truly know what something is programmed to do, chances are it is programming us. Of course, it's probably impossible to learn the true nefarious underpinnings of every bit of technology out there. And I like to believe that even if something was programmed to do something nefarious, it can be repurposed for good. But as Douglas also writes, it's important for us to make active choices about what we want to do to ourselves rather than letting machines or the markets propelling them to decide for us. And the best way to avoid being programmed and to make your own decisions is to stay mindful, to stay centered, and continually remind yourself who you are and what is important to you. So, stay mindful of the way that you are interfacing with technology. Before you open an app, ask yourself if that is really what you want to do right now. Imagine your ideal life, and write it all down if you want to. Then cultivate habits that help you work toward this life. You might use technology to get there, you might not. Realistically, you probably will. And that's okay, as long as you are actively choosing how you use that technology. Technology should be serving you, not the other way around. I hope you found this helpful, and I hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend. I will speak with you again on Monday.